Hi, and welcome to another episode Around the Neighborhood with me, Scott McMahon. This is a show about the quest for fun, history, and mystery in our backyards. And today we're in Oregon City, and what a better place to explore some history and some fun than the first incorporated city west of the Rocky Mountains way back in 1842. I love popping over to Oregon City to stop by the end of the Oregon Trail Museum, the McLaughlin House, the Highland Still House, and of course, the Willamette Falls. You can get a great view of the falls from this viewpoint across from the Highland Still House, but for most of the public, we can't get up close enough to see it. That's because since 1829, the Willamette Falls has been occupied by some form of industry or another. And the father of Oregon, John McLaughlin, who set up a fur trading business for the Hudson Bay Company, originally built a sawmill at the falls. But for generations before 1829, Native American tribes from all over the area came here to fish salmon and lamprey eels. They used a technique called dip netting. The Native Americans would stand out on a platform and literally dip their nets to the base of the falls to collect the fish. In fact, just recently, access was granted to the Confederate tribes of Grand Ronde to construct a platform to continue the tradition of dip netting. You have to imagine that for thousands of years, Native American tribes were essentially hunter and gatherers. And then one day, they come across the falls, a place where they can more easily collect fish, and not to mention how gorgeous and magnificent it must have been to arrive at the falls. So it's no wonder that this place still has spiritual meaning to the indigenous people. The name Willamette originates from the native word wall-amt. It's unclear what it meant, but some scholars say that the French fur traders mispronounced the tribal word mat for met, which means water. And actually, Willamette University was originally spelled and pronounced Wallamat, eventually became Willamette with an I, and for many people coming to this area, we can help them out by saying it's Willamette, damn it. So for thousands of years and generations of different tribes that came here for their annual spiritual retreat and fishing, the European fur traders showed up and then just set up shop. On this side, we had Oregon City, which was established in 1842, and then across the river, we had Lynn City, which was established in 1843, that became West Lynn. And let me tell you, the competition was fierce between the two cities. If you can only imagine when the steamboats came down the river and they needed to dock someplace to trade their goods, which side do you go on, Oregon City or West Lynn? Well, this competition ran strong until the Great Flood in 1862, which pretty much wiped out both cities. And speaking of floods, the two recent ones were in 1964 and 96. I bet there are some reviewers out there who can share some of their stories with us of what it was like when the flood came through town. Anyway, after the flood in 1862, it took almost a decade for a lock system to be constructed on the West Lynn side. This allowed for boats to bypass the falls, and it was in operation all the way up until 2011 before it closed. And speaking of 2011, that's when the Blue Heron Paper Company closed shop as well. Now, there have been other paper mills companies in business along the falls, but from what I understand, the Blue Heron was one of the last ones to close. The Westland Paper Company across the way closed in 2017, but it just reopened and changed its name to Willamette Falls Paper Company in 2019. But back to the Blue Heron. So this massive structure and some of the counterparts across the river have been closed and abandoned for several years. There have been tours of the abandoned mill, and it's been used as a set piece for TV shows like Grimm when it was shot here. And speaking of Grimm, you can check out the episode that I was on way back in season 3. Anyway, let's take a look at what happened after the Blue Heron Paper Company closed in 2011. The land and the assets were auctioned off for development, and it wasn't until 2013 before a Canadian company bought the property. But that deal fell through in 2014, and another buyer stepped up, George Heidergerkin, if I pronounced that right. Anyway, he paid $2.2 million in bankruptcy court. $2.2 million for this whole swath of land. That's some prime real estate. This is some crazy stuff. Anyway, these public partners offered $5 million to build this walkway path to the falls, and he said no. But just recently, a new owner has come into the picture, and that is the Confederate tribes of the Grand Ronde, who bought the property for about $15 million. So Heidergerkin pays about $2.2 million, and he does nothing to the property. He does absolutely nothing, and he sells it for $15 million. That's a heck of a deal. Now there's more to the story here, as things have not all been a healthy, productive relationship. So now that the Confederate tribes of the Grand Ronde are involved, there is hope for progress. Imagine if Main Street was extended and there was new shops, restaurants, museums, hotels, apartments, etc. that span this area. And imagine if there was a public walkway that brought us even closer to the falls to experience all of its magnificence. Now, what makes this so interesting is that back in 1855, the native people of this area were relocated to a reservation out towards the coast. Basically, the U.S. industry took over and the government just moved the natives to get out of the way. But now, after all these years, the tribes have regained ownership of the land and are in works of constructing a walkway along the river as opposed to running it through Main Street to create public access to the falls. As you can see, there's no construction yet, and we can only imagine what this place will eventually look like. Are they going to do a complete tear down? How much will they keep this historic building intact? I mean, it would be cool if they updated the buildings that look retro, something like they did in the baseball parks in Baltimore, in San Francisco, and San Diego. There are a lot of other groups invested into this project, not only the tribes of the Grand Ronde. There's the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, but also there's a Willamette Falls Trust. All the links to these groups are in the description below. It's exciting to know one day something will happen here, but on the flip side, it'll be interesting to see what happens to the traffic flow, or no flow. If you want to keep up to date on the development of things, again, I'll leave all the links in the description below. In the meantime, let's just take a fly over the falls to imagine what it will look like in the near future. Well, I hope you like this episode, and since the show is sponsored by my real estate services, all my contact information is listed below in case you needed to buy or sell a home, especially in this area. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you around the neighborhood.